everyone. Hi Carolyn.
Hello.
We are today at Leiden University, and today with me here is my colleague Carolyn Barr. She is an international relations officer at Leiden University, and her main area of focus is informational support and communication for prospective full degree seeking international bachelor's and master's students. Is that correct?
Yes.
I represent international students, and I'm sure that Leiden is actually a great place for them to study. So that's why this was one of my priorities to come to Leiden University. Thanks for welcoming us. And I know that Leiden University welcomes international students. I know there are a lot of international students here, and you offer fully English-taught programs. Can you tell us which programs these are actually, the ones that are taught fully in English, and what is the average percentage of international students on these programs?
Yeah, this varies, of course. In the bachelor level, we currently have 17 English-taught bachelor programs across a number of our faculties. So we have programs in the humanities, such as things like philosophy and linguistics and different area studies where students can study a certain area of the world and do language, culture, history kind of aspects of all. So there's quite a lot of humanities, but we have archaeology. We also have our behavioral and social sciences, so sciences that deal with human behavior, things like cultural anthropology and development sociology, psychology. These are all taught in Leiden. We also have our Faculty of Science here in Leiden, so Science for Sustainable Societies and Data Science. And in The Hague, we also have a number of programs from different faculties, including our Governance and Global Affairs. So things like International Relations and Organizations, Urban Studies, Security Studies, International Studies. And we have a special program at Leiden University College, which is our honors college in The Hague, for liberal arts and sciences global challenges, where students can sort of take all the best things that happen at Leiden University and put them into one flexible curriculum at the LUC. So it's a very special program outside the other 16. And then we have almost 200 specializations at the master level. Many of them are taught in English, so I'm not going to be going through every single one of those, but there are many options for students to study in English.
Yes. And do many international students actually come? What is the percentage? Do you have any statistical information?
It really does range. So generally at the bachelor level, between I'd say 30 and 60%, depending on the program, will be international students coming from outside Dutch high school students, essentially. Yeah. Overall at the university, it's between 23 and 25% most years overall. Also keeping in mind that we have over 40 Dutch taught bachelor programs for our Dutch students too. So there are options for all students at Leiden.
Exactly. You also mentioned that the university has two campuses, in Leiden and The Hague. Why is that? Is it because of the number of students, number of programs? And maybe you can tell us about the benefits of both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, surely it's possible that those things were taken into account when that decision was made. But of course, Leiden University has been here in Leiden for 450 years. This is our anniversary year, actually, for that big number. And the city grew up around the university, as you could imagine. And then in 1997, the campus in The Hague was opened. And really, that was predicated on the fact that The Hague is the international city of peace and justice and security. And so our Faculty of Governance and Global Affairs was founded there. But also, for a lot of students, that's what they love about the programs in The Hague, is that they're really immersed in that particular environment that they want to work in later on. So there's a good benefit there for them. The cities are only 10 minutes apart by train, so it's really easy to go from campus to campus. But students will live in one city or the other, generally where they study. So they won't tend to say live in Leiden and study in The Hague and vice versa, though it is possible. But usually, you're a Hague student or you're a Leiden student. and neither would change it for anything. They both love their locations and what they're doing.
I remember I was an international relations student myself, and studying in The Hague would be a dream because you're so close to all international organizations that you're reading about, that you're studying, and then you have this hands-on opportunity to just maybe even go and visit. I'm sure that students also can find internship opportunities in international organizations.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, you're right in the middle of it all. I had a student assistant once from security studies, And he said, I'd regularly sit in the Plein, which is an area in The Hague near the Parliament. I'd be sitting and having my coffee, and the Prime Minister would ride by on his bike. He's like, you just can't get that anywhere else. And so yes, internships, but also, some of the professors, of course, are doing research. It's all intertwined with the city of The Hague and many different projects and research things that are going on in The Hague. Yeah. The International Criminal Courts are there, the Peace Palace, so there's lots of opportunities for many different experiences.
This is just a dream, really, honestly. You mentioned Prime Minister. I know that Leiden University has really prominent alumni, like also Prince William Alexander, right? I heard that Spinoza and also the one of the American U.S. presidents were I think that was Adams?
Yeah, John Quincy Adams. His father was the ambassador from the U.S. to the Netherlands, I believe, at the time, which was in the 1800s.
Leiden is one of the few Dutch universities that offer urban studies program. That's a very interesting one. Can you tell a bit about it? And is it a selective program? How difficult is to get in?
Yeah, it's one of the programs that I really actually like the most because it's a number of different things actually that are sort of different than many options in the Dutch system. It's of course a newer style program, it's a newer style subject around the world, and it focuses on cities, so that's the urban part, and it's interdisciplinary, which in many cases, students look at the Netherlands sometimes for the university colleges, which are multi and interdisciplinary specialized liberal arts programs. And so they think that's the only place they can have sort of flexibility and interdisciplinarity. But there's more and more programs outside of those that also have elements of this. Not the same, but elements of interdisciplinarity. So if urban studies looks at things like sustainability, health, safety, sustainability, these kinds of subjects, these are the pillars, and they'll use cities as their subject when they're looking at these different types of aspects. So students have a lot of flexibility in their program to really also make it what they're looking for. And this kind of subject really looks at the careers of the future overall, because we're looking at a world where most people will live in a city in the coming sort of 20, 30 years. So all these elements will look at jobs that maybe don't even exist yet. Now, this particular program and many of our programs are very specific. So they have what we would call sort of a standard admissions process. So in the Netherlands, about 80% of programs at the moment really are all about diploma equivalencies. So what high school diploma did a student study in high school, and is it equivalent to a Dutch high school student here in the Netherlands that would be having entry possibility to a research university?
Yeah.
And so if the students have that particular diploma, and there's over 40 diplomas around the world that are eligible, then they would be admissible to this program and many, many other programs across the country. We have additional pieces that are not admissions related. They're more about study check choices. So we have matching processes to help the student make a decision if it's the right program for them. But admissions is primarily based on that. Are you academically prepared to come into sort of the Dutch system? Whereas some other programs, so I said 80% is just mainly about the diploma. Sometimes a subject that they might have to have. So if they're looking at sciences and so forth, they might have to have certain math or certain sciences. Yeah. But mostly it's diploma. But the other 20% have selection. And so I've mentioned the university colleges already. Many of them, if not all of them, have what we call small scale and selective process, much like the American system, where there's multiple elements, including like academic excellence.
And motivation
could be, could be motivation, could be a letter of recommendation, could be a video, could be an interview. There's many, many different things. So it's more of a holistic way of admissions. Yeah, exactly. And programs, there's a small number of programs with this style of admissions because they have certain aspects of their program that are important that they have to select students. And then we have numerous fixes programs or fixed number. So these are the CAP programs because they are very, very popular. And there has to be a way because we can't enroll every single student. And those
Can you
programs,
name some of these programs?
Yeah, absolutely. Very typically, international relations and organizations, business administration can fall into this category. Certain types of engineering, things like physiotherapy, medicine, although medicine is only taught in Dutch in the Netherlands. Psychology, certain very popular subjects. And these programs have to be very transparent about how they select students. It's generally academic excellence will factor in there somewhere. Sometimes it's a test that the program will give. Sometimes it might be motivation. It might be other aspects. But it's just mainly they have to have sort of a gate to say how many students can come. And the reason why it's important that they're all different is because students can apply to 4 programs here in the Netherlands, and 2 of them can be numerus fixus. Yes. So because there's a restriction on these numerus fixus programs, and there's other types of selection, there's no restriction on those other ones, just on the numerus fixus. So in practice, it doesn't make any difference to the student because they're selective, but in terms of those restrictions, it does make a difference.
Yes. Okay, so for selective programs that are a limited number, that are very popular, it's clear that this is a standard procedure with motivational statement, with sometimes maybe resume. All the admissions requirements are of course on the website. And for non-selective, which is the most of your programs, then can we then say that admissions is easier in the Netherlands? Can you say it? Because then it is only based on diploma equivalency, and then how do you actually choose candidates? Is it first come, first serve? Or
No, it's a common conception that it's easier to get in the Netherlands, and it can feel that way. But Dutch high school students here in the Netherlands, to get into a research university, go to high school for 6 years. So we compare all other diplomas to that 6-year program. And so that's why not every student is eligible to apply to a research university in the Netherlands. So we are selecting based on diploma.
Yeah.
And some of those diplomas do have grade requirements and it depends on the diploma that the student's looking at. So yes, it may seem a little easier in the beginning, but I will say that once students do start their program, for example, they will have to do very well in their first year in order to be allowed to go on to their second year. We have something called binding study advice. And this varies per university, and at Leiden it's about 3/4 of the courses students have to pass in order to go to their second year. So students do really have to work very hard from the first week that they're here. They have to keep on top of their studies. It's very intense. Students have to be very academically minded and manage their own time very well to be successful here. So I think it's a philosophy difference to other countries in the world that students might be looking at, because here students in general have a right to higher education depending on which high school diploma they have and what type of institution that will allow them to enter. So there's this belief that you're academically capable, we're going to give you a chance, and you have to make the best of that chance. It's very different than exclusion. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't see more selective programs in the future. That is absolutely possible, but the remainder will still be true that you'll have to work very hard from year one and really put your foot on the gas pedal to make sure that they get through.
So Dutch government basically makes education more accessible and more open for students, also international students, but then to get a diploma and to graduate, you really have to work hard. So this is really a misconception I think many have about the Netherlands. Many students say, oh, I don't need a motivational statement, or I don't need extracurricular activities to apply to Dutch universities, I'll opt for that. But then they come and they see the rigor of academic rigor and the requirements, and that's the harsh reality. What do you think are the common mistakes the students do when they are applying to Leiden University, both for selective, non-selective? And what piece of advice could you give? What would you say that I wish the student knew before applying to Leiden?
Yeah, I mean, for the non-selective programs, I don't think they necessarily make mistakes, but what I would hope that they would do ahead of time, and this actually is for all programs, is that they spend time looking at the curriculum. You know, they've looked at the program, hopefully read the website, chatted with students. You can do that on our website as well, asking them questions, but read what they're actually going to be studying and see if it appeals to them. So making sure they've gone deep enough when they make their final choice that it's the right choice. Because we're relying on them. We give them a lot of resources to do that, but we're relying on them to do that. Whereas the selective programs, we're kind of doing that for them to a certain extent because we're selecting.
Yes.
And so the non-selective programs are self-selecting in a way. You know, you're hopefully interested in that subject, you're really keen on doing the studies, and you're coming.
Yeah.
For the selective programs, I think, number one, students don't realize the deadlines are very early. So they make the mistake. We get many, many emails after deadlines saying, oh, I just found out about your program, can I apply? No, the answer is no. So they do have to have applications in by a deadline. They maybe haven't read the instructions about how to apply to the program and what the selection process is. So making sure that they're managing their expectations, they know what documents they need to submit, how much time they need to spend. So for example, our university college has a motivational section. It's not just the letter that they've written for every other university. They can't submit that. They have to be very specific about what interests them about LUC. There's prompts, there's questions, there's different ways of engaging with LUC that they have to do as part of that process. So it's not something they can do overnight. So that's sort of a mistake that I think some students will look at. And for the numerus fixus programs, they haven't looked at how they will be selected. So I always recommend that students look at each program, you know, what is the selection process? What are the 2 or 4 or whatever criteria? So for example, our international relations program has 2 criteria: 30% of their selection will be based on their grades, 70% on the outcome of an online assessment about first-year subjects that they're going to have to take, and they've taken in February. And we always get a lot of questions after the fact, about that process and maybe why they didn't get a spot. And so they do have to really look at, how are we selecting students to see if they have a good chance. So those are sort of the common mistakes that I think students just haven't dug deeply enough to know what the process entails.
You really just have to take time to research and look on the website. I will link some of the useful information pages to this video. I'm sure Carolyn can also send some of the links if you wish students would take a look before applying. Okay. So we have discussed selective and non-selective programs, and it's probably a question more about selective programs, but also in general, what kind of qualities are you looking for? What is the ideal candidate for Leiden University?
Well, in a numerous fixes situation, it's all about academics. So yes, it's about your grades. Those are your earned grades that students were looking at. But in both of our numerous fixes English taught programs that I'm speaking about now, they also have an online assessment. And the online assessment is a test. It's about first-year subjects in the program they're going to be studying. So it gives students insight into what they'll study so they know if it's the right choice. And it gives us insight if they're good at those things. And so that's still about the academics, and it's about the student's choice. Are you going to the right program? So that's really it. Nothing else is taken into account when it comes to selection. So extracurriculars, none of that matters in admissions. I think it very much matters in terms of all-rounded nature of a student and all those aspects that they gain from those. So it doesn't mean that they shouldn't do all of those things when they're coming to the Netherlands. They just aren't doing it for the transactional nature of, if I join this club, I will get admission to a university. That's not something that happens in the Netherlands and at Leiden. For the university college, they will look at the whole aspect of the student because they're coming into a small-scale community. It's a residential community. 400 students live together, 200 live in The Hague, so it's a different community. So they really want to make sure that both the environment suits the student and the student's going to bring something to that community. So that's why they want to know about motivation. They want to see what kind of extracurriculars the student is interested in, what kinds of topics and things they want to do in life. These kinds of things can be a part of that admissions process. And hearing from a counselor or teacher in a recommendation letter are also quite important in this process. So it's more that, of course, those credentials or those criteria can change from year to year. So it's not important, the list I just mentioned, but the concept of who are you as a person? Are you academically strong? Are you an excellent student? And all the other things that make you who you are that maybe would make us a good campus for you and vice versa. So they will be looking at those aspects, but only in the University College at Leiden.
I think many are confused about the university college concept because you have the same in Amsterdam and here and many universities. Can you explain the difference between Leiden University and Leiden University College? And then what are the prospects for the students of Leiden University College? Do they, for example, get more opportunities or more chances to apply to masters afterwards or to bachelors to Leiden University, and how are these two interconnected?
Yeah, in general, sort of at a country level, there's no difference in the sense of the degree that the students get at the end and the opportunities they will have in the world, because they're all bachelor degrees. All research universities are research universities, and every university college belongs to a research university. So the example of Leiden, we're Leiden University. We have 17 English taught programs. One of those is at Leiden University College. So the student will graduate from Leiden University. They will get a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science in Liberal Arts and Sciences, Global Challenges. They're graduating from Leiden University. But what's different about these programs and at LUC is that they are often these residential colleges. They're the honors colleges, so they're very intense. They are their own separate community in many, many cases, in most cases. So our LUC has their own campus building in the city of The Hague. It's a high-rise right next to Central Station. They live and learn there together. They are an entity unto themselves under the umbrella of Leiden University. And it is this liberal arts and sciences curriculum where they have the ability to have majors and minors like in the US, really personalize their curriculum, build what they want to study, combine subjects of study or go deeply into one and have a few others to study from, and to have that community experience. So that's different than sort of regular programs. There's no name for the other programs in the Netherlands, where students, of course, will have an amazing student experience, but they have to go out and make their own friends. There's no community purpose built around each program. They're not residential if they're not at the UC. So they're just, coming to university and making friends and building your own community and going to your program that is mostly about one topic, even if it might have some interdisciplinary elements.
Yes.
So there is a big difference there, but they are research programs and they're all bachelor programs. So they have lots of opportunities together.
So the diploma basically is the same. It's about the way of study. And that's a great advantage, I think, for international students that the university college is residential, because it's a big problem sometimes to find student housing in the Netherlands. So basically being admitted to a university college program, you are already also, you have a guaranteed place at the residential campus. Is that
for most, not all? So students do have to look at the university colleges to see what is offered. At LUC, they have to live on campus for the first 2 years. And then in the third year, they're in the city of The Hague on their own for the most part. So the residential aspect for us, yes, is included there. But I will say, just because the programs are residential isn't the reason why students should be looking at the university colleges, because they are very specific in the kind of education they offer. That liberal arts philosophy of education is very different to other programs. And they really have to be connected to those aspects. The housing's a bonus, but it's very clear when we see students who are applying just because there's housing, and that's not a good motivation to apply to a UC.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to diploma equivalency, if a student from another country is not sure about whether his or her diploma is equivalent and it's will be accepted in the Netherlands, where should they start? Where should they look for information? Do you have specifically for Leiden University, do you have a system where they can check, or is it more on governmental level?
Well, every university should have this on their website in some way, shape, or form. So we do at Leiden University. We have an admissions and sort of application section in our general website that gives them the overview of admissions. And in that, there'll be a listing of diploma equivalencies. For admissions specific to each program, they then still have to look at the program, but the diploma equivalencies is listed on our website. There's over 40 there, kind of like I said. We also have a specific list for our science programs as well. And LUC has their own list, which are all very similar, but they're there for students to reference. If the diploma is not listed there, it's likely it's not directly admissible to Leiden University or Research University. They can always email and ask, and we can give them other directions.
That's true. Okay. I think I've covered the areas that I really was curious about. Thank you so much for this really interesting and informative conversation. I will now ask a couple of questions about the misconceptions that we've also discussed, about the myths that international students have about Dutch educational system. Because you're well informed and you're probably the best person we can ask these questions to, then we're not going to miss this opportunity. I will ask you questions and then you just say yes or no if it's true or not about the Netherlands. So international students say that Dutch universities require you to speak Dutch to study in the Netherlands. True or false?
False. There are almost 400 English taught programs in the Netherlands at the bachelor level and thousands of masters. This, of course, may see changes in the future, but it's still hundreds and hundreds of options in English.
Yeah. True or false that you can get to a Dutch university without submitting a motivational statement?
It's true, because not all programs ask for a motivational statement.
For non-selective, it's not required. True or false that university in the Netherlands is free for international students?
I wish it was, but that is false.
That's false.
The tuition
you have
fees.
to apply to a scholarship if you
so tuition fees are set by the nationality in the sense of European Union or European Economic Area or not. And the government sets those non-EU fees every year. And then the non-EU fees are set by each university, so they can vary quite a lot across the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
All Dutch universities have dormitories for students. True or false?
False, because in the Netherlands, the universities are not allowed to own or manage housing.
Exactly.
So anything, there may be dorm-style buildings that are owned by major housing corporations across the cities, but students will generally have to cook and clean for themselves.
Except for university colleges that provide more opportunities for that.
There are some residential options, but even those residential options are owned by housing corporations. So they partner with the universities, but the universities don't own that housing.
Okay. Most Dutch bachelor's programs are not selective.
That's true.
True.
Yeah.
You can apply with predicted grades without having the final results. True or false?
Yes, predicted, or of course students in their senior year that haven't finished, they can apply and then any decision will be conditional on them achieving the proper diploma.
Yes. All Dutch classes are taught in big lecture halls.
False. It will depend completely on the program. So at Leiden, some of our area studies, you might have between 5 and 20 students in a class.
Yeah.
At the LUC, it's no more than 25 ever. But at the international relations, you might have a lecture of 300, 400, 500 students, but always a small tutorial or a work group. So there will be very sort of one-on-one or small-scale education still in the big programs.
I think it's very much typical for Dutch system to have these small classes, actually collaborative work with where they can communicate with each other.
Yes, absolutely.
All bachelor programs are 3 years long in the Netherlands.
False. At a research university, they are 3 years in length. And then there are other types of higher education called universities of applied science. They also offer bachelor programs that are 4 years in length for the most part because they include internships or on-the-job training.
Okay, that's true. To get to Dutch university, you need a standardized test as SAT or ACT.
False. If you are an American student studying in the US, it might be wise to share those two tests or one of the tests because it's part of the curriculum of the US. It's generally not looked at for most reasons with any other curriculum in the world.
They would need IELTS or TOEFL for international students.
Depends on the diploma they studied in high school and where they studied it. So there are exemptions
if it was
based
in English,
on.
then...
Yeah, if it was an English international school, this sort of idea, many times there'll be an exemption, but that will also be listed per diploma. Certainly on our website.
These are all the questions I have. Thank you very much for this. It was a long conversation, but it was very informative, very engaging. I think I personally got a lot of new information, and I'm sure that international students will listen to it and will take some notes, learn some lessons, and go to the website and check the links that we're going to put under this video. Thank you very much again for your time.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.